In the name of Allah, the compassion, the merciful, peace be with all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I would like to express to you the greetings of His Excellency Dr. Jamal Sanad Al-Suwaidi, Director General of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research. I wish you a wonderful evening through this lecture, which is entitled Abuse of Psychotropic Substances and Treatment Outcomes, by Professor Dr. Hamad Abdullah Ghaferi, Director General of the National Rehabilitation Center in the United Arab Emirates. Dr. Hamad Al-Ghaferi is a prominent expert in the medical domain. He held a number of positions within his roles in local and regional organizations. He is the director of the National Rehabilitation Center and also the head of the National Rehabilitation Committee, and also an adjunct professor at the College of Medicine and Health Sciences, and a mental health advisor to the World Health Organization Regional Office for the Eastern Mediterranean. Dr. Hamad is a board member of the Anti-Narcotics Council in the UAE and is a member of the advisory board of the College of Medicine and Health Sciences at the United Arab Emirates University. Previously, he held a number of positions, including the chair of the Global Commissioners for the Colombo Plans International Center for Credentialing and Education of Addiction Professionals, ICCE 2016-2018, and chairman of the Arabian Gulf countries doctors in GCC. He is also the head of the regional committee for the World Committee for Addiction Medicine in the year 2017, and also the deputy chairman of the Arab Union for Protection of Drug Addiction. Is also a professor of medicine in 2014 in Jordan. His Excellency Dr. Hamad Abdullah Ghaferi focuses on developing research in developing countries and publishing research outcomes. He is also focused on the various aspects of general health and protection from drug abuse, especially in the Arab world. He published many research articles into this domain. Dr. Hamad Al-Ghaferi earned the Sheikh Rashid Award for Sciences and Culture in the year 2003 and in the year 2014. He also earned lifetime membership to the American Society of Addiction Medicine. He earned a bachelor's degree in medicine and general surgery from the Faculty of Medicine in Jordan University of Science and Technology in 1999, and a master's degree in public health, occupational and environmental health from Tulane University in the United States in 2002. He also obtained a PhD in primary healthcare and addiction from the School of Medicine, University of Aberdeen, UK in 2013. Doctor, I'd like to welcome you to this wonderful evening in the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research. Definitely, all of these outstanding achievements in this domain speak for themselves, and you will be telling us about those topics today, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much, and from the compassion the merciful. First and foremost, I would like to thank His Excellency Dr. Jamal Sanad Al-Suwaidi for hosting me at the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, which is a prominent center, and we have gone into a tour into this wonderful center, and the UAE is proud of the center, which is an outstanding one in this domain. I would like to thank the people in charge of this great effort, and this, of course, Your Excellency, and Your Excellency, Dr. Ahmed, please allow me to start this lecture. The nature of the topic may be completely different, but we will delve deep into it gradually, step by step. And then from Allah, the compassionate, the merciful. The title of today's presentation is Abuse of Psychoactive Substances and Treatment Outcomes. Globally, many countries find it very difficult to list all the items of this problem and the magnitude of drug abuse in particular, because it is difficult to talk about the size and the volume of this problem and say that we have this number of drug addicts in a certain country, for any country of the world. But we always rely on statistics. The UNODC's report almost 2 months ago proved that in 2016 we had 271 people who are diagnosed as drug addicts. They may have abused drugs between the ages of 15 and 24. We are talking about 5.5% of individuals in this particular category. This category represented 3.7%. So we are talking about a rise in this percentage. And of course, definitely a rise in the drug abuse. So among those individuals or addicts, some of them are diagnosed as addicts, full addicts, or fully dependent on drugs. And we have global mortalities of 550,000 mortalities in this regard, in addition to a high increase in drug abuse, which is like 35% from 2009 up till now. This increase may not be tangible. However, it is actually quite noticeable due to the problems and the implications of drug abuse. When we talk about such issues, the UNODC, or the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, 15% of all of that large volume reach the level of addiction. Those are the only ones who reach the level of, or the stage of rehabilitation, and only 7% of them receive real treatment. And globally, treatment is offered only once, because it's a very expensive process, and we will talk about the cost of treatment and rehabilitation globally. This is one of the major problems. Despite medical services have developed and evolved over the years, particularly in the field of combating drug abuse, yet those who reach the stage of treatment are very limited in number, and therefore major ramifications take place. The distribution of drug abuse globally, the UNODC is the main entity focusing on drug abuse worldwide, and it is affiliated with the United Nations. The image that we see on the screen, the map of the world here, show that most narcotics are tranquilizers, which are in Asia, and in addition to other types of drugs. Using psychoactive and using different types of drugs, talking about traditional drugs, which we'll be talking about soon, in addition to psychoactive substances and prescription drugs, which may be abused, which may have crept into the country or into the market in an improper manner. So we have been talking about psychoactive substances. We had 200 psychoactive substances which are misused, whether they are prescribed or prescribed medicines, or prescription medicines, or medicines that are smuggled into the country illegally. Now we are talking about almost 700 different globally acknowledged substances which have been clinically analyzed, and unfortunately the market for drugs is the third largest market globally after arms sales and oil industry. It is a very massive business, and the UAE is witnessing certain operations of smuggling those drugs. The United Nations statistics show that only 15%, 10 to 15% of those drug shipments are stopped and are confiscated. So this is the amount that may have already crept into the countries and been smuggled into countries. Now the percentage increased by 3.7, from 3.7 to 5.5%, and reached 7.3%. This percentage of people may have abused drugs, and we're not talking about alcohol. There are completely different statistics for alcohol. But the basic point that we're talking about is the cost of drug abuse, the cost of drug addiction. We are always talking about prevention and the security side and the protection of borders and so on. But globally, the cost of drug addiction is like 2 to 4% of the national GDP. In the year 2012, we conducted a study at the NRC in collaboration with the UNODC to find out even a partial image of the problem in the UAE. Is it associated with drugs? Is it associated with alcohol? If we're talking about drugs, what types of drugs are we talking about? Because decision makers would like to know the exact amount, the cost actually, and therefore the treatment side and the rehabilitation side and the prevention side and even the security aspect would be based on this. When we talk about 2%, we took the GDP in 2012 and compared it at the level of the projects at the level of the UAE, and we found out that we would be able to build the total cost would build 3 mosques the size of Sheikh Zayed and 10 bridges like Sheikh Zayed Bridge, in addition to feeding 66 million starving children for 2 years. This may be direct and indirect cost, but most of the cost is actually the indirect cost because it comes from loss of productivity. Because those drug addicts are not patients like any other patient. They are having an entire family suffering around them. The drug abuse, unfortunately, the patients we have or the drug addicts we are helping or at the NRC come at a very late stage, and they have massive ramifications at the psychological and physical and emotional aspects. And especially that 56% of drug abuse is associated with psychological disorders, which require treatment. Loss of productivity cost $4.7 billion, $600 million for cost of jails and prisons, and the controlled devices as well, and apparatuses. The treatment, $70 million. Now, this was in 2016. In 2019 and 2020, with the rise in numbers, the cost definitely has risen. This is the direct cost, which results from the calculations in this regard, and this is the service provided by these centers. Thank God, we are proud of offering free of charge rehabilitation services and treatment for the UAE nationals. As for the nature of drug addiction is a disorder, is an illness. It has to do with the enzymes of the brain. These drugs change the hormonal composition and excitation of hormones in the brain, and thereby gives a very short-term fake feeling of joy and happiness, which is based on these hormones. However, drug addiction is a disease just like cholesterol, diabetes, and any other disease. It needs treatment, and treatment is a very important element. However, the major part which we focus on is treatment of intellectual issues associated with drug abuse, and especially after reaching dependency on drugs. As for the motives for drug addiction, the studies conducted by the NRC proved that 95% of the patients had family issues, and in addition to weakness of religious beliefs, and in addition to being associated with the wrong folks, having the wrong type of friends, and copycatting others, and copycatting and imitating bad individuals, and especially that in the light of the fact that those psychoactive substances are taken for a purpose other than the main and primary objective. Some people say, take this pill, it will help you study better. You will see that we used to see actually patients or drug addicts who have only high school degree or less. But now we are witnessing college degrees and PhD holders those who have BAs and are university graduates who are becoming drug addicts. So we are talking about the element or the type that we talked about, which is in red, and we have shown previously, which is trimpatis. We have caffeine, nicotine, and we have other types of cocaine, let's say, and amphetamines. The drug addicts now are playing and manipulating their own mood to take tranquilizers and to take amphetamines on the other side, to change and manipulate the hormones in the brain to obtain this fake feeling of joy, and thereby they obtain this fake feeling of happiness and joy. The sedatives reduce the activity of the brain and may result into brain death, and we have seen many cases in this category. The most important category that we talk about is alcohol and minor sedatives, codeine and opium and heroin. Almost 7 years ago, most drugs on the market were artificial drugs that have been chemically manipulated to give the same impact of the traditional drugs. Yet we still have traditional drugs such as heroin and cocaine, and unfortunately it is causing a major number of deaths, especially if those smuggled dosages are very pure. During a period of time, we have seen that the number of deaths increased in a certain period of time, especially when there was coordination with the anti-narcotics departments. We find that many amounts are being confiscated. Hallucinogenic agents which cause misconceptions, especially about with regards to hearing, auditory, and visual hallucinations, which causes massive psychotic disorders. We must be fully confident of this, especially the patients who are abusing drugs, because in some cases those drugs may lead to psychotic disorders. I'm talking about a certain number of psychological symptoms which are unacceptable to the community, but at this particular point we need the specialist in this regard. The most important point, especially with regards to parents, mothers and fathers, we need to inquire about this issue. Maybe your son or daughter has abused drugs or abused a number of drugs, yet we must ask the experts in this regard. Or we should be able to even examine them, because we may have co-psychological morbidities, and maybe he abused drugs for this reason, or the other way around may also be true. So we need medical intervention for the proper diagnosis and finding out the exact root causes for the drug abuse habit, and therefore reach the detox stage and treatment rehabilitation. The key element here has to do with changing behavior. When we have sons and daughters, one of the primary points that have to do with drug addiction is the start of addiction age. When does the addiction age start? According to scientific studies, the youngest registered age is 11 years old. At the level of the Middle East, in the UAE, the age was like 12 years old, which was initiated in our 2012 study. It was based on scientific research. When we talk about the age of 12, let's get back to the drug abuse. Some people say, I abused it 1 or 2 years ago. So we are basically talking about the minimum threshold at 10 years old. So we need to focus on this 10 years old who are aware of the media, especially that they have access to the internet and so on. it is very easy to get access or to gain access to those substances. Unfortunately, when parents are unaware of this or ignorant, are unaware of how their children are abusing drugs, and then the symptoms begin to appear and their parents are unaware of this. This is a very primary and critical element. We need to follow up their behavior. Have they changed their friends? Is it difficult for them to stop abusing drugs? Another element of diagnosing drug abuse or drug addiction, which was approved by the World Health Organization, WHO, is that despite the abuse of drug abuse and drug addiction, using it for an extended period of time and seeking drugs even if they are in distant locations, and abusing those drugs despite the fact that they cause medical and psychological problems, and addicts have legal issues as well. They have problems with the law. They may be arrested. God forbid, drug abuse may result into committing drugs or committing violations of the law. So we need to focus on the statistics here and the importance of having comprehensive statistics for registration at the level of the UAE. Mood disorders and sleep disorders, loss of appetite, weight loss, change of behavior. We are talking about many practices or bad practices that may result in this regard. In some cases, we may notice at home that the precious items are lost from the house because maybe they are using their pocket money. They start stealing stuff from the house, even simple things which are very cheap. They start selling these house items or household items, or stealing some stuff from their homes. So here we see that they become pale, and we see them not showing any attention to personal cleanliness. Abuse of these drugs result into many clear symptoms, and even sometimes we see the remaining or the used drugs and spending money in a very extravagant manner. We are not just talking about this age category, which 10 or 12 years old. Scientific studies have proven that even after 25 years old, after you reach that age, there is another stage for the drug abuse. Before that period, when the brain is not fully mature, they don't have full brain maturity to realize how dangerous this is, and therefore they abuse drugs, especially that the part of the brain that is responsible for emotions is not fully mature. It's until 22. We say, in colloquial Arabic, we say they have reached maturity when they are 22. After the age of 22, there's another starting point for addiction and drug abuse at the age of 25. As for it always starts with trying out or testing this drugs, because there is always the first use. The first use, which gives this misconception or this fake feeling of happiness. Then they start using the same drug maybe for 2-3 times to reach a higher level of joy and ecstasy. Then we have continued use and using a higher dosage to reach the same level that used to be caused by a smaller dosage of drugs. Now we're talking about dependence and the increase in the drugs levels in the body, and then we have the implications and the complications related with drug abuse. Unfortunately, drug addicts reach a rehabilitation center only when they are in a very late stage, or unfortunately they come after they have already been relegated to the legal system and gone into the legal system and the police. So we need to focus on prevention programs, because prevention programs is the primary element and cornerstone of rehabilitation programs. Our key objective is to prevent falling into the vicious cycle of drug addiction by conveying information about this kind of danger, especially that every day a new type of drugs appears. Now they are importing them even through Amex and FedEx and so on. They are imported online, but of course security departments and the police and anti-narcotics departments are working relentlessly to stop this kind of practice. Of course, we are talking about the financial problems, the legal and social implications, social outcomes, and violence, and domestic violence, divorce, and also at the international level, drug abuse has always been associated with a higher rate of divorce and family disputes. God forbid, with an extra dose, with an overdose of drug may result in death. At the level of the Arab world, not just at the level of the UAE, there are no comprehensive studies that can give us the exact volume of the problem and the resulting fatalities. We know that it may be a car accident and someone has died, but this car accident may have resulted from drug abuse, or drug addiction, or drinking too much alcohol, and then we have the death that results from that accident. So the fatality is really resulting from drug abuse. Medical treatment. The NRC represents actually a leading initiative. It was established under the directives of the late Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, God bless his soul, to establish the first rehabilitation center that is associated directly with the President's office. This is how important and how valuable the individual is. It was established in 2002 when we first started, but the study of this subject started in the year 1999 with the feasibility study, and the importance of this project and the importance of associating it with the decision maker. And His Highness Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Presidential Affairs, has been offering unlimited support to the NRC, or the National Rehabilitation Center. This is the leading model worldwide of how far the decision maker goes in terms of supporting the rehabilitation and treatment levels to a great extent. We will see the levels of rehabilitation and relapsing into drug addiction and the level of success here and the models that we have. With regards to medical and behavioral treatment, developing life skills, psychological treatment and social treatment, it's not a treatment for the individual, it's for the individual and the social circle around him. We are talking about the prevention level at the first and second and third level. At the first level, we aim to protect individuals from falling into the vicious circle of drug addiction. The second level is raising awareness and raising the level of information that individuals have about the ramifications of drug abuse, and thereby change behavior. With regards to treatment, we are talking about from the material side, spending a single US dollar on prevention saves $9 in rehabilitation. We have spoken about NRC and its establishment, and also what really makes it stand out in comparison to other rehabilitation centers globally. It was classified as the third best center in the year 2016. It has an independent nature. It is associated with the office of the President of the UAE, and it is the main reference point for offering treatment, and it aims to boost rehabilitation at all levels. Definitely we're working in the field of the general strategy of combating drug abuse. We have been previously talking about the traditional drugs. Now we moved on to psychoactive drugs, and now we are talking about behaviors and behavioral addictions to some online games and electronic games. And we are also supporting the WHO in this regard. With regard to behavioral addiction, the NRC was one of the primary centers for testing those behaviors at the level of the UAE and the Middle East. The most important factor that we focus on is training UAE nationals This process requires Arabic speaking specialists who can convey the proper information, the right information to the patients. And having UAE nationals in this regard, and this is the challenge that we started tackling in 2002. We are proud in the NRC of having colleagues who have obtained PhD in this field, and they work at NRC. We have 6 PhD holders who obtained their PhD degree during their work at the NRC. Many of them have master's degree, and 95% of social experts and psychologists are well trained, and they were trained in the USA, in Manfield University Hospital in the USA, and this hospital is affiliated with the Harvard University in the USA. They receive training there, and all of these training programs are being updated according to international standards. Today, the most important element is confidentiality. When dealing with drug addicts, they require a high level of confidentiality to protect him from himself and from the community, and to project an image of him as a positive individual in the community. The treatment team in the NRC, which is a comprehensive team, is headed by a psychologist and psychological experts, and I'm very honored to help them and to assist them, especially that many of our patients have major needs in this regard. As for the pipes of co-social spiritual model, I'm sorry this slide is in English, but I want to stress the biopsychological and spiritual model that we see here. There's the biological side, the psychological side, and the social aspect as well, in addition to the religious aspect. The religious aspect is very influential when we deal with our patients, and also the element of loyalty. Regardless what kind of mistakes our UAE nationals did, they are very loyal and very religious, and they do feel a great deal of regret of what they have done, and abusing drugs. They say, how can we become effective citizens? How can we repay the debt of our country after all the mistakes that we have done? So we try to boost the scientific aspect and the level of loyalty to the country. After the rehabilitation process is completed, we say that, thank God, we have martyrs who have sacrificed their lives for our country. So we tell our patients that they are no less than them. They can get much better and improve their lives. Naturally, the NRC patients are sent to the center either voluntarily, they come voluntarily, or they are relegated by the judicial system, whether it's a verdict by a judge or by the public prosecution, and then they are transferred to the NRC to receive treatment involuntarily at the center. So we have 65% of voluntary patients, and 30 to 35% of the patients have been relegated to the center according to the law of anti-narcotics. We receive around 600 patients per month, 20 to 30 new patients per month. So we're talking about a large number of patients, and this is, let's say, the trust that we have from our patients with regards to the NRC as they come voluntarily to receive treatment. And the treatment program ranges from 4 to 8 weeks. It has a full program of detoxification and follow-up and psychological treatment and intensive follow-up after the treatment to ensure that they don't relapse into drug abuse and drug addiction. Our programs of treatment are based on sound scientific evidence, and through our experiences we had some experiments. Some of them failed, so we stopped those experiments and we corrected our mistakes and we started again, a fresh start, and thank God we succeeded. The NRC, thank God, we are really proud of the directives of His Highness Sheikh Mansour. Within 3 years we have had an independent team to assess the medical programs at the center. This is not really implemented anywhere else in the world. the assessment of medical programs that we have at the NRC, the type of medications that we use, and so on. And we have legal support. We have the legal capacity to import special drugs in this regard. We are importing them directly from the manufacturers. They are very expensive drugs and medications that we use at the center. We have spoken about the programs for men and women, and today we'll have a special program for drug addicts below 18 years old, especially for inpatients. We started seeing patients below 18 years old, males and females. So we are having a special program for them. These are the statistics that we have. We have seen, so up till now, we treated 4,016 patients over the past couple of years. Most of them, the age group is less than 39 years old. So we are talking about a working drug addicts who are at the best working age, and they should have been very productive individuals. And we have seen less than 12 years old, of course, is a very marginal number, 0.12% and 30%. I see this number, which is for age group below 20 years old, is not really representative. 60% of them are unmarried, 32% are married. And one of the scientific studies that we conducted is, does drug addiction cause divorce? There are global statistics in this regard, and yes, it increases the number of divorce cases and family-related problems. The level of education, most of patients, 80% of them actually do not have any higher level of education higher than high school. But some of them are higher than that level. A number of them rely on prescription drugs, especially that when they are facing extreme pain, and other hospitals give them such medications. They have no ability to stop using those pain drugs or painkillers, strong painkillers. As for the primary drugs, 47%, actually 74% show that these are composite drugs, or a cocktail of those drugs to reach to ecstasy and joy. But we still have 11 to 12%, which is composed of sedatives and alcohol, hash, around 3 or 4%. But those for opium. But unfortunately, according to the availability of these drugs in the drug market. Of course, here when we are talking about stimulants, 17%, lyric and cannabis, we see the numbers here. For cannabis, it's 13%. For heroin and morphine, 12%. Tramadol, 11%. Tramadol is very famous now. It is one of the famous abused drugs in large quantities, but things have changed now. There is a mixture between those things. The outcomes of treatment programs. Any treatment programs must be measured. What's the outcome of those programs? This shows how successful you are as a center. The issue of relapse, suffering a setback or a relapse, it was 44%, it increased to 54%. 65% of addicts get back or relapse into drug addiction. We studied this in collaboration with our stakeholders and in McLean and UCLA, and we found that from the patients who abuse drugs and receive treatment and complete 1 year of follow-up at the external clinics, or almost 44% to 54% may relapse into drug abuse once again. But the level of full treatment, how many of them can spend after a whole year of treatment without any problems? 1 year without any problems. And we are talking about full recovery from the psychological, legal and medical aspects. The percentage range from 26%. Globally, the global average is 20% only who make a full recovery. Now, with the in the year 2017, this figure has risen to 33%. Leakage, or let's say escaping the treatment process, we had 8%, and the level of escaping from treatment is like 70% globally. But here, this is the element of strength of treatment is follow-up and continuous follow-up. The General Health and Research Center, we collaborate with the World Health Organization. This is the first center of its kind at the level of Europe, Africa, and Asia in this regard. There has to be scientific research that support the treatment process. The first research we have published in this regard are the genes that cause addiction. It was an honor for us actually that one of the female UAE nationals who has a PhD collaborated with Khalifa University and published her research in this regard. We found that 3 genes are in our patients, and we compared it with another sample from Australia, and these genes have been proven to exist, and they result in a high percentage of drug addiction. As for behavioral assessment, whenever you have researches and scientific research, we have the International Addiction Review magazine. It's an international magazine now, and we have research is published in them. Awareness programs are available at all levels, and we focus on school students and all the measurement of all scientific research, and we are focusing on establishing a national observatory for monitoring this problem, because at the end of the day, the decision maker wants to know certain figures, wants to find out certain figures and the level of drugs that are being used. The training center is one of the primary aspects in this regard. We have planned and worked relentlessly from day one at NRC, as we have faced the major challenge, yet the team at the NRC, whom we are proud of, started from scratch, started from learning English language during the working hours. We started with special courses in this field, and thank God we have among our staff, some of them have turned into experts in training others, and they spread knowledge and awareness. We have a joint program with the UAE University, a diploma in the field of clinical psychology, and now we have a master's degree program in clinical psychology. We have developed a large number of programs which we have collaborated with continuous education medical programs in the center, and we are specialists in this field. We are specialists in the field of drug addiction, not just physicians. We have physicians, we have psychologists, and we have sociologists and social workers. We have nurses, and we also have the recovered patients. I'm running out of time, but we have been collaborating globally with a number of organizations to develop training programs and prevention programs, and we have specialists in this regard. Thank God, now the center has been certified for teaching and training by the Ministry of State, or the State Department, the State Department in the United States of America, and we have issued a number of universal treatment curricula which have been translated into Arabic. All of them have been approved by international magazines. What we look forward in the future is increasing the number of beneficiaries from those services through establishing a virtual clinic based on artificial intelligence to convey information and to reduce reliance on drugs, and to reduce the occurrence of relapsing into drug abuse. The major challenge that we had on the picture to the far left, we were in a building, then we moved on to a villa, a rented villa. Now we have the best building at the international level, thanks to the support of the government of the UAE and Your Excellency, Dr. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you open the floor to questions so we can exchange experience and learn from one another. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Hamad Al-Ghaferi, for this wonderful lecture. We are really proud of having in the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates, having such a wonderful and a highly important social and treatment facility as represented in the NRC. I would like to thank Dr. Hamad Ghaferi for introducing the National Rehabilitation Center. Thank you very much, Doctor, for the information, the wealth of information and statistics that you have given to us in this regard, in this wonderful forum. It is also very good that today we have seen the religious side and the sense of loyalty, national loyalty, is a major element in the treatment process. This is a very valuable piece of information, and maybe you are listening to this for the first time. Thank you for highlighting that the causes of drug abuse go back to family disputes and family problems. As you have said, Doctor, spending $1 on prevention saves $9 in treatment cost. You have mentioned the family problems and hanging out with the wrong folk and having too much spare time. So, would like to thank you very much for this presentation. We have learned a lot in the social and educational aspects, and now would like to open the floor for interventions and questions. Please, if you have any question, feel free. Please, Your Excellency. Please introduce yourself. Peace be with you. Thank you very much, Doctor. I would like to thank Dr. Jamal Sanad Suwaidi for selecting these important topics and everyone in this important center. Thank you very much. My name is Adil Hosani. I'm a legal researcher. My question, Your Excellency, at the beginning, you said that those who are being arrested are actually the drug shipments that are confiscated in this regard represent only 15%. Why can't we stop a larger amount of drugs? Maybe the community needs further support, but definitely we need to check why. Secondly, treatment was free of charge, as you have kindly pointed out. After 1 year, maybe the drug addicts would relapse into drug addiction. Do you start calculating the cost and making sure that the patients still pay the cost, or will it continue to be free of charge because treatment is very expensive? Please let me answer. Okay. As for the statistics, what the illegal drug shipments that are being confiscated or stopped and intercepted by the police is 10 to 15% only. Drug dealers are always one step ahead in the field of drug smuggling globally. Yet, we are talking about the security apparatuses is very active. And during our work, I was honored to be a member of the Anti-Narcotics Council, and I've seen the large amount of efforts put into combating drug smuggling at customs and through the Ministry of Interior. But when we talk about countries that have open borders, countries that are very strong at the economic side, and they have strong purchase power, and therefore a large number of drug dealers are keen to smuggle it either to the country or smuggling it to the country to be exported to other countries. Of course, the types of crimes associated with drugs and drug smuggling, our colleagues in the anti-narcotics department have much bigger experience, but every single day they are facing new phenomena. As for treatment, definitely the drug rehabilitation process is very expensive. 4 weeks of treatment at the NRC cost around 120,000 dirhams. Using medication, using psychological programs and rehabilitation programs and training programs for the patient and for the family, and follow up after they leave the center. Thank God, one of the countries, our rulers, God bless them, do love their people, and they treat people even if they come to the center 5 times. And also the expats in the UAE, the expats living in the UAE receive treatment at the center also free of charge, and they, in some cases, they pay a very small fee if they receive this course in America, a single course, 4 weeks, covered by the health insurance in America, which represents around $30,000. This is a single course of treatment for 4 weeks. However, this patient in the USA cannot get into the treatment process once again. But here we provide free treatment, and from experts, we take a very small fee which relies on the nature of the treatment program according to the assessment of the medical staff. And now we are adding this side to the healthcare program. So the healthcare system will also cover the aspects of treatment of drug abuse. Thank you. Please, Your Eminence, the Sheikh, please. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. I don't have a question, but I need really to praise and express my admiration for this wonderful lecture, which highlighted the causes for calamity and the causes for and the mechanisms of saving people. The religious side, which you have highlighted, is very important, and thank God we have very strong religious roots in this country. We have wonderful mosques and prominent sheikhs and scholars. So what was highlighted by my brother, Dr. Hamad Al-Ghaferi, is very important. I attend many lectures, and I just don't comment or pose questions. But for this particular lecture, we really need to congratulate Dr. Hamad and would like to thank Dr. Jamal for selecting this topic in this center. Dr. Jamal Sanad Swedi, God bless him, selects very important topics. All of them are outstanding topics. But for my own work and religious work, this is a very special lecture, because the religious side is very important and it must be based on correct concepts. Most of what you have said was mentioned actually in the book of Imam al-Ghazali, which was named Reviving Religious Sciences, which is definitely focusing on reforming people's lives, because those who do not have sound religious foundations will not have a good life. That's why His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed paid special attention to publishing a very important book that has a summarization of the revival of religious sciences by Imam al-Ghazali. People don't have time to read such a book, which has 4 large volumes. That's why we have the summarized book published. And His Highness Sheikh Khalifa, God bless him, issued a decree to publish this summarized book, and it focuses on individuals and who you hang around with, how to select your friends, and how to also conduct acts of devotion in the proper manner and according to the ethical values, because religion is not based on acts of devotion only, but on ethical values. And when we have proper relationships between men and women and good ethical values, this will enable human beings to really realize the value of their homeland, because the homeland is part and parcel of religious values. Many people believe that the Arab nation, the sense of being loyal to the Arab nation is against the Islamic creed. This is not true. It's a comprehensive system. Thank you very much, and I'm very glad to have attended this wonderful and blessed lecture. That's why I asked His Excellency Dr. Jamal Sanad Swedi to enable us to get a copy of this presentation and this lecture to convey to others, because this will be very beneficial to many people. Thank you, Doctor, and I congratulate you for this wonderful lecture, and I would like to thank Mr. Bush, and peace be with you. Thank you, Your Eminence, the Sheikh. We have really enjoyed what you said and learned a lot. Please, Doctor, please be brief. Thank you. Peace be with you. My name is Qasim Salama. I'm a Syrian researcher. Actually, with regards to the general overview of drugs, it is either a healthcare perspective or a legal perspective. It was not perceived as a terrorist perspective. It should be viewed from a terrorist perspective also, because all terrorist organizations derive their funding from drugs. If we look at the drug farms and the locations of cultivating drugs, they are in terrorist. They are controlled by terrorist organizations, including the Houthis in Yemen. The basic source of income is selling qat, and even in Sinai, and in the oasis in Lebanon and Turkey, which used to be the main source of Captagon for the GCC and Saudi Arabia. They have been exporting millions of tons of Captagon. So I hope that you would perceive of this threat as a terrorist threat and introduce the necessary laws in this regard. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is a very important point. Maybe I've not touched upon this point, but in our work, as you have kindly pointed out, focusing on psychoactive substances and drugs and so on, they are being abused, as you have pointed out, for terrorist funding. And from one time to another, we have a very high sense of security, and we perceive of these cases. But globally, there are other countries where we have found patients who turned into members of ISIS. Unfortunately, because of drug abuse, they have turned into members of terrorist organizations. In addition to the fact that, unfortunately, some countries base their economy on drug smuggling. In the UN report, a number of countries work on supporting the smuggling of drugs to support their own economy. So we're not talking about a political aspect, but this is definitely, I'm sure that the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research has many studies which can be conveyed to decision makers in this regard. But at the level of treatment and prevention, we are working in monitoring and observing this phenomena. For those who may unfortunately have been abusing those drugs in a very and abusing those drug addicts, and we need to protect them in a comprehensive manner. Thank you. We'll take one last intervention, please, Doctor. Please be brief. My name is Dr. Ali Al-Amoudi. Actually, Doctor, I would like to, on behalf of myself and on behalf of everybody here, I would like to express our gratitude and appreciation for this wonderful image that you have projected and the level of treatment and security in the country. I will talk about reinforcing the role of the NRC because I'm a professor at Abu Dhabi University and I'm teaching toxicology. So I had to take students in terms of implementation aspect, which is very important also. I've really seen a great level of praise with regards to raising awareness and post-care, which is part of the General HQ of Abu Dhabi Police. This is an outstanding product that boosts the role of the NRC, and we are very happy. We have a number of specialists in this department, the Department of Post-Care. It's a wonderful strategy, and it is highly beneficial. It has a number of beneficial aspects through the you also have the raising awareness bus, and you have a great deal of effort and to boost collaboration also with the Abu Dhabi Police GHQ. This really underpins your role in protecting our homeland from the dangers of narcotics. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. Sorry, I apologize to those who have raised their hands because we have run out of time. At the end of this lecture, I would like to express our gratitude on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Jamal Sansuri, Director General of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research. We would like to express our appreciation for Dr. Hamad Abdullah Ghaferi, the Director General of the National Rehabilitation Center in the United Arab Emirates. We would like to express our appreciation for you, and we would also like to thank you very much, and we hope to see you in other upcoming lectures. And peace be with all of you.